An elderly widow helped a Hells Angels member for free. The next day, 250 Hells Angels surrounded him on a blistering Tuesday. A 72-year-old widow handed a biker a glass of iced tea and an ignition coil. 24 hours later, 250 Hells Angels rolled into her quiet street, not for vengeance, but to say thank you in the loudest way the heart can speak. Before we begin, hit subscribe to Voices of Darkness, tap like, and share this with a friend. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Now prove your love. The first heat wave of June pressed down on the town like a heavy hand. Asphalt shimmered. Wind vanished. Even the crows sought shade. In that hush, Elsie Schmidt stood at her kitchen counter, coaxing pie dough into a perfect disk, a dusting of flour ghosting her knuckles. Arthur would have laughed. "You make pastry like a prize fighter," he used to say, then kiss the crown of her silver hair and steal a slice before supper. 5 years gone, his tools still slept in the garage, each wrench tucked into its outline, a cathedral of metal and memory. From the road came a sound that didn't belong to small towns, a throaty, hammering growl. It rumbled, staggered, coughed, died. Elsie set down the rolling pin. Through the lace curtain she saw chrome, black leather, patches, a machine that looked bred for long roads and longer silences. The man who stood beside it was built like a wall you'd think twice about climbing. Sunglasses, beard, ink crawling over forearms. He kicked the tire, swore softly, and for a second, just a breath, looked lost. Elsie pushed open the screen door, and it sang its old, tired note. "Everything all right out there, son?" His head lifted. The sunlight caught his lenses. She saw her own small reflection in them, apron, flower freckles, widow's shoulders that had learned to square themselves. He hesitated, cleared his throat. "Bike's dead, ma'am, and I got no bars." She said. "That's a shame on a day like this. You look parched." "I've iced tea." He weighed it, this porch, this grandmother, this kindness, and nodded. "Water'd be good." "Thank you." She came back with tea that sweated down the glass and cookies that breathed cinnamon. He took one, another. The hard lines around his mouth loosened. "What do you figure it is?" she asked, nodding at the Harley. "Could be ignition. Could be wire. I've got a plug." "Not a coil, Arthur," she said, and the name warmed the air. Arthur kept the sort of garage that could fix a battleship. "Tools are out back." She tilted her head at the sun. "And you are cooking out here." He didn't want to trouble her. She wouldn't hear of it. The machine growled forward to the shade, and the garage's cool dim opened like a pew. Jars labeled in Arthur's careful print, nuts, fine, nuts, coarse, bolts, any, lined the wall. A rollaway chest gleamed. Somewhere a radio had died on a country station and never been buried. He traced wires, patient as prayer. "Ignition coil," he said finally. "And this lead's frayed to sin." Elsie knelt by a wooden chest and rummaged until dust rose in diaphanous swirls. Out came a small box, stamped with a brand that hadn't bought a billboard in 20 years. She lifted the lid like a magician. Inside, a coil, new, a spool of good wire. He stared. "That's exactly it." Arthur was a believer, she said, in preparedness and in never throwing away a part that might someday save a stranger's afternoon. They worked, him at the heart of the machine, her ferrying iced tea and wrenches like a nurse in a field hospital. When the engine finally caught, the garage became thunder and joy. He laughed, a clean, boyish sound that startled them both. He reached into his vest. "How much for the part, the tea, the—" "Everything?" "Not a penny," Elsie said. "You'll pay it forward." He studied her face, took off his sunglasses. Eyes the color of dark water. He nodded. "Name's Jax. Elsie." He pocketed the cash, slid the glasses back on, and the mask returned, but it didn't quite fit the same. "I'll make it right," he said, voice lower, truer. He left with a wave and a tail of road dust. The house went quiet, the way a church goes quiet after the choir leaves, an echo of song still lingering. That night, Elsie slept lighter than usual and dreamed of hot engines, roses, and first bloom, Arthur's hand finding hers under a workbench. The next morning dawn peeled the sky from violet to peach. Elsie watered the hybrid teas, fingers deep in the living earth. She didn't hear the first engines. She felt them, vibration lifting through soil into bone. Then the sound manifested, multiplied, became weather. Hundreds. Birds exploded from the maple. The neighbor's hound tucked its tail and threaded under a porch. Elise turned, hose hissing, and watched a column of motorcycles arrive like a migrating river of iron. Chrome flashed. Black vests read Hell's Angels in red and white. Single file became double, became a respectfully controlled chaos that filled the street but did not crush it. Deputy Miller's patrol lights spun 3 blocks down and then politely stopped. From the river stepped Jax, sunglasses off this time. He climbed the porch steps but stopped too shy of the top. "Elsie," he said. Her name sounded like a thing he'd rehearsed to get right. "You helped a brother of ours, me. We don't forget." A murmur rolled the line of men. Approval. Not threat. We came to pay it forward. He turned his wrist, and the river divided into currents with purpose. A trio drifted toward the picket fence. 4 more toward gutters and windows. A man with a gray beard and hands cut by 1,000 engines lifted a toolbox like a priest lifts a missile. "Ma'am," he said, "where do we start?" Elsie's throat tightened. "The swing squeaks," she managed. "Kitchen faucet, too. Drip drove Arthur mad." She tried a smile. "And if anyone knows roses, be gentle." What followed looked like a small miracle told in socket sets and hose nozzles. Bikers moved with quiet competence, soft-footed and attentive as midwives. Hinges took oil. Shingles met hammers. Windows became a choreography of suds and sunlight. A young prospect knelt among the roses and worked the weeds like an apprentice in a monastery garden, the patch on his back flexing as he learned to cradle stems without harm. Neighbors gathered, fear curdling into fascination. Phones recorded. Whispers multiplied. Not a single law broken. Deputy Miller leaned on his car, hat in hands, and let the day rearrange his definitions. In the kitchen, Elsie baked on instinct, hands remembering the recipe her mother swore could stop a war. The first pie vanished into a grateful clamor. The second turned into slices ferried on paper plates across a lawn that had not seen this many boot prints since Arthur's wake. Jax didn't eat at first. He moved room to room with 2 others, an electrician and a plumber, listening more than speaking. When they reached the laundry closet, he crouched. "Drain line's choking," he said without ceremony. "No wonder she stutters." "You talk like you've done this," Elsie said. "Road teaches more than maps," Jax replied. "And I wasn't always on the road." He fixed it. The washer purred like a good cat. They returned to the porch as the sun bellied toward evening and the work reached its last satisfied exhale. The picket that had always listed slightly stood straight now, like a veteran at attention. The swing squeak was gone. Instead, a long, contented creak like a ship at anchor. Jack stood beside Elsie and watched his brothers remount. For a moment, the town and its noise fell away. Only the 2 of them stood at the edge of a new understanding. "We're not saints," he said softly, "but we're not the stories they like to tell either." "I've never trusted stories that leave the heart out," Elsie said. He nodded. "We have a code." "So did Arthur, I think." "He did. You gave me something I couldn't buy yesterday," Jack said. "A place to belong for an hour when I didn't. We can pay bills." "We can't pay that." Elsie's eyes brightened. "I only gave a coil and a kitchen table." "You gave trust," Jack said. "That's rarer." The engines flared. A flock preparing to lift. Jax took a breath as if to say more, then let it go. Some things didn't need words. He tapped 2 knuckles against the door frame, an old rider's superstition for blessing and return, and stepped down. The procession rolled out, disciplined, controlled. Thunder poured into distance. The street widened behind them, twice as quiet for all the noise it had held. When the last taillight disappeared, wind moved again. A sparrow reclaimed the maple. The neighbor's hound crawled forward and sneezed at the smell of fresh oil. Elsie sat in the newly hushed doorway and let the day settle into her bones. What lingers by dusk? Speculation had gelled into legend. Mrs. Henderson arrived with a lemon loaf and advice. Both were accepted with grace. Deputy Miller ambled up the walk, took off his hat and said, "Ma'am." "If every invasion looks like this, I'll sleep like a baby." Elsie laughed the kind of laugh you learn after grief has taught you to measure joys. She brewed coffee for both, told the truth without decoration, and watched as their faces softened around something like awe. Fear, she realized, was a shape the world wore when it forgot to look twice. The next day she found a package on the porch, a new mower, the good kind, with a note that read, "Keep those roses beautiful." Weeks later, the mechanic who normally charged a week's pension for a diagnosis replaced a pump without invoicing. "Friends of friends," he said, and turned the radio up too loudly to hear her protests. Elsie's world did not become loud, but it became larger. She began to see the faces in town as if they'd been repainted with more human color. And sometimes, in the late evenings when the swing's creak matched the night's breath, she would think she heard, far off, the low percussion of engines, like thunder promising rain. She would smile and say into the darkness, "I know. I remember too. Arthur's tools stayed on the wall. But now, beside the outline of a 3/4 socket, a small rectangle of white sat taped to the pegboard. In neat, practiced letters it read, "A coil for a kindness. Pay it forward. Mid-story share push, as promised. If you love Hell's Angels, share this video. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers. Now prove your love." Ending, emotional close. Years later, when the roses formed an arch that blushed at sunrise, a rider occasionally passed slow by the house and lifted 2 fingers from the throttle, an old salute stitched from road miles and respect. Elsie would lift her hand from the swing and return it, the way sailors tip their cap to a lighthouse that never failed. Kindness had not changed the world. It had changed too. And sometimes that's where the real revolutions begin. If this story touched you, subscribe to Voices of Darkness, like the video, and share it with someone who needs reminding that kindness can roar louder than any engine. Let's reach 1,000 subscribers. Now prove your love. Night settled like a quilt over the small American town, and in the old wooden house on Cedar Lane, Elsie Schmidt slept with the peace of someone who had done right by the world, and seen the world, unexpectedly, do right by her. But far beyond the roses and whispering maples, beneath a canopy of stars stretched across desert sky, Jack sat by a dying campfire. The embers glowed like dragon eyes, hot and slow, breathing memory into the night. He wasn't alone. Around him lounged 3 riders, veterans, their vests worn soft by years and storms. Men who did not fear much in life except perhaps silence. Silence meant thinking. Thinking meant feeling. And most bikers had feelings they preferred locked away like old pistons in rusted chambers. One of them, Bear, tossed a pine twig into the fire and grunted. "You went soft back there." Jax didn't answer immediately. He took a drag of his cigarette, exhaled toward the stars. "Or maybe," he murmured, "I remembered what being human feels like." Bear snorted. "We ain't philosophers. We're riders, we ride. Fix what needs fixing, break what needs breaking." Jax flicked the ash away, eyes still on the horizon where stars melted into desert heat. That woman didn't have to help me. Didn't even flinch. Didn't ask who I was. Didn't care about the patch. He paused, jaw tightening as a memory flashed. Elsie's hands passing him a wrench, delicate and steady, as if she had handed out tools her whole life. "She saw me," Jack said softly. Before she saw the leather, the fire cracked. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. Finally, Ghost, who had been quiet as church dust, leaned back and whispered, "My grandma used to talk like that." A solemn hush settled. Brotherhood wasn't just beer and asphalt. It was scars carried with pride and wounds hidden behind laughter. But tonight something had been shaken loose. Something old. Something gentle. The kind of feeling men like them weren't raised for. Gratitude. Ghost shifted. "I ain't prayed since '09, but I prayed for that lady after we left." Jax didn't look at him, but his voice warmed. "Yeah, me too." The desert wind swept their smoke toward the dark horizon. In the distance, coyotes howled like a choir of restless souls. The angels weren't saints, but saints don't always arrive with halos. Sometimes they come in leather, steel, and rumbling thunder. Elsie sat awake, though she told herself she was only resting her eyes. Something tugged at her chest, not fear, but a quiet pull, like a soft wind nudging a sail. She reached up and touched Arthur's framed photo. "Oh, Art," she whispered. The world still full of surprises. The house felt different now. Cleaner, brighter, and not just from repairs. There was a presence, a feeling of being seen, valued, protected. She walked to the porch, barefoot on cool wood, and looked down the moonlit street. Somewhere out there, far beyond telephone poles and cornfields, Jax and his brothers rode under stars. She didn't wish to be young again. She only wished the world had always been like today, when kindness could travel farther than gossip. when loyalty could roar like an engine across state lines. She whispered into the night, "Ride safe, boys." As if carried by fate, a single motorcycle hum drifted across town, quiet, respectful. Like a guardian passing through the shadows, Elsie smiled. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The next morning, a knock at the door, sunlight spilled across her kitchen when she heard it. Soft, hesitant tapping. Not frantic, not official, curious. She opened the door. On her porch stood a teenage boy, maybe 17, hands stuffed awkwardly into a hoodie pocket. Hair shaggy, shoes worn. Trying to look tough, but his eyes betrayed fear and exhaustion. You're the lady, right?" he stammered. "The one who helped them bikers?" Elsie blinked. "I suppose I am. Are you all right, dear?" He swallowed hard, like words were gravel in his throat. I followed him." His voice cracked. "My dad was a Hell's Angel. Died 2 years ago. I didn't know where else to go." Elsie felt the world tilt just slightly, not in fear but fate. "What's your name, son?" "Tyler." She opened the screen door wider. "Well, Tyler." Every good story starts with a meal. "Come in," he hesitated. Tears strained behind his bravado. Kindness is a language the lost understand. Immediately, the boy stepped inside, and with him came the first ripple of a new chapter, the legacy of one act of kindness, multiplying across lives. On the road, the code lives back in the desert. Phones buzzed. A message spread through angel ranks like wildfire. Widow woman who helped Jax. Look out for her street. Quiet protection. No order, no debate, just a code older than laws. Every Hell's Angel within 500 miles now carried an invisible route on their mental maps. A promise made in thunder. No harm shall touch her. Not while wheels turn and hearts beat. Jax exhaled slow, cigarette ember glowing bright. Arthur would have approved. He muttered to the night. Bear rolled his eyes, but didn't argue this time. Ghost whispered, like a vow carried in desert wind. "We ride for ours, and now..." "She's ours!" Engines fired up one by one. Thunder rolled again. The Brotherhood moved, not as outlaws, but as sentinels of an unexpected angel. Back at Elsie's house, Tyler sat at the kitchen table, devouring eggs and toast like he hadn't tasted homemade food in months. Elsie poured him milk. He tried to hide the tremble in his hands. "Why'd you follow them?" she asked gently. He stared at his plate. Voice small, wanted to belong somewhere. Elsie nodded slowly. Her heart cracked, not in pain, in purpose. "Well," she said, touching his hand kindly, "until you find where you're going. You can belong here for a little while." The boy's breath hitched. Not because of pity, but because kindness was something he didn't know how to receive without breaking. Outside, the roses glowed in morning sun. Pink, fierce, alive. Saints don't always pray. Sometimes they plant roses. Sometimes they fix spark plugs. Sometimes they ride Harleys through dust and starlight. And sometimes, just sometimes, they answer doors to lost boys and say, "Come inside, dear." You're safe here. Mid-story reminder, if you love the Hells Angels, share this now. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Like, comment, subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Now prove your love. Kindness can echo like thunder, but thunder always draws storm clouds. And Elsie Schmidt was about to learn. Sometimes angels wear leather. Sometimes devils do too. Morning light. New weight Tyler finished his breakfast like a starving soldier. Every bite a memory returned to his bones. Elsie stood at the stove, her apron dusted with flour again. Routine, comfort, armor. "Your father," she asked softly, "did he ride with them long?" Tyler swallowed. "Yeah, they treated him better than anyone did. They gave him a place. Then cancer took him. I got nobody else." Elsie placed a warm hand on his shoulder. Delicate, steady, human. "You have me, dear." "For as long as you need," the boy's eyes brimmed. He blinked fast. Boys his age didn't know how to cry without feeling like they were breaking a rule. Then, tap, tap, tap. A knuckle on wood. Firm, official, not friend. Tyler froze. Elsie's breath paused. She opened the door. And there stood Deputy Miller, hat tucked under his arm, apology already on his face. A badge, a burden. "Morning, Ms. Schmidt," he began, voice cautious. "Town council's a little jumpy. Yesterday shook folks to the core. Elsie offered tea. Manners don't retire for nerves. but Miller shook his head. Ma'am, I just gotta ask, are you in any danger? Anyone threaten you? Force you to help them? Her eyes sharpened. Polite steel. They were gentlemen, she said, and they showed more decency in one afternoon than some folks do in a lifetime. Miller flushed. Shame looked honest on him. He noticed Tyler then. The badge in him straightened. You staying here, son? Tyler stiffened. Why? I ain't done anything. Miller raised a calming palm. Just making sure you're all right. Elsie's voice cut gently, but firm enough to move mountains. He is. And he's welcome. Something unreadable crossed Miller's eyes. Suspicion? Respect? Envy? He tipped his hat. Well, if anything changes, you call. He left. Tires crunched gravel. Dust settled slow. Tyler exhaled shakily. You didn't have to do that. Elsie smiled. Soft. Unstoppable. I always help those who need it. He whispered. My dad used to say that too. Wind before thunder hours later. While Tyler napped on the porch swing, exhaustion claiming him like a blanket, Elsie tended her roses. A low rumble approached. Not a roar. Not a storm. One bike. Alone. Different. Tone. Lower. Heavier. Like a prayer wrapped in danger. The motorcycle stopped at the end of her drive. The man who dismounted wasn't Jack's, but he moved like someone the world had once feared him and still should. Long dark coat overcut, silver hair in a braid, scar slicing one eyebrow. Eyes like polished steel, old pain and earned wisdom. He didn't remove his helmet right away. He simply stood, breathing in the garden as though smelling a memory. Then he spoke, voice gravel and church bells. You must be Elsie. She didn't flinch. Not anymore. And you are? He removed the helmet. Weathered face. Quiet intensity. A presence like storm clouds deciding whether to bless or break. My brothers told me about you, he said. They spoke your name like a prayer. She blinked, surprised. And your name? Saint. Tyler startled awake, heard the name, whispered it like legend. Saint Mercer. Because every biker knew that name. The one men whispered about like myth. A founding-era legend. Part ghost, part law, part wild mercy. Saint nodded once at the boy. You look like your father. Tyler froze, jaw trembling. You knew him? Saint's eyes softened just slightly, like granite warmed by morning sun. I did. Tyler's lips parted. Was he good? Saint looked at Elsie, then at the road, horizon, memory. And when his answer came, it was carved from truth. He was loyal, and he tried his best in a world that didn't make that easy. Tyler's chin shook. He believed him. Elsie watched, heart tugging. Not by fear, but by fate. A warning. Delivered between roses, Saint stepped closer. Boots silent, hands empty, visible. Respectful. I came to say thank you, he said quietly. The road carries your name now. Elsie flushed with humility. I only did what any decent person should. Saint nodded slowly. And that, he murmured, is rarer than gold. He paused, then the tone shifted, darker. But there's something else. Elsie stilled. Tyler leaned forward. Saint's voice dropped to a warning rumble. Word travels far, and not every ear that hears it belongs to a friend. Elsie's breath hitched. Tyler's fists clenched around the porch cushion. Someone dangerous? She whispered. Saint looked out at the road, scanning it like a wolf reading a forest. Men who hate what they don't understand, he said. Men who don't want us showing kindness. He turned to her. Gaze steady as oath steel. We'll watch over you. Quiet, always, but keep your doors locked at night. Elsie swallowed. Nodding, Tyler stepped forward, shaky but brave. I'll watch too. Saint studied him. Saw his father in the stance. Saw the fear. Saw the fight. Good, he said. But remember, courage isn't loud. It's patient. Then he placed a small silver wing pendant on the porch rail. An old, worn symbol of the road. For luck, he said. Elsie touched it gently. Warmth blooming in her palm. Saint mounted his bike. Engine deep as a drum, one act of grace, he said quietly, can ignite loyalty that lasts a lifetime. He looked at Tyler one last time. Your father would be proud. Then he rode off. Not like a storm this time, but like a promise. The house is quiet, but not alone. As the dust settled, Tyler turned to Elsie, voice small. Miss Elsie, do you think I could stay a while? Elsie smiled, eyes glistening like sunrise on dew. As long as you need, dear. And somewhere far off, engines echoed again. Not approaching, not departing, just watching. Not guardians by design. Guardians by loyalty. Kindness had started something, and the world for once wasn't trying to stop it. It was beginning to follow it. Mid-episode reminder: share if you love true loyalty. And let's reach 1,000 subscribers. Subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Prove your love. Heroes don't always arrive early. Sometimes danger arrives first, and heroes ride through the night to answer it. Night settles with uneasy stillness. Cedar Lane breathed slowly beneath the hush of twilight. Crickets chanted. The porch swing rocked gently. Tyler slept on the old plaid sofa, exhaustion wrapped around him like a borrowed coat. Elsie wiped flour from her hands and studied the clock. 27 p.m. Arthur's old wrench keychain sat on the counter beside Saint's silver wing pendant. Two symbols, past and present, glinting in quiet alliance. She poured milk into 2 glasses. Habit, not logic, because for the first time in years, she wasn't alone. Then, headlights. 2. No, 3. Slow. Predatory. Crawling like wolves testing a fence. These weren't angels. Angels didn't move like snakes. The engines idled low. Deep, unsettling, the way a threat hums in a man's throat before his fists speak. Elsie's fingers tightened on the rail. Tyler stirred, eyes darting open. Instinct, fear, recognition. "That ain't them," he whispered. No patch, no cuts, just grim smiles and the glint of trouble. One rider leaned forward, eyes like shark black. A cruel grin spread across his face. "You the old lady who thinks she's protected?" Elsie did not tremble. Tyler stepped in front of her, thin shoulders, defiant heart. Like a boy trying to shield a mountain. "What do you want?" Elsie asked, voice calm as oak. The man chuckled. "To see what makes the angels play house." "To see what's so special," his brother smirked. One flicked a cigarette at her roses. Tyler flinched.
"Don't."
Elsie's voice cut through the air like a blade dipped in grace. "This is a place of kindness. If you came looking for harm, you'll find none here, unless you bring it yourselves." For a moment, tension froze. Then the first rider leaned in. Voice venom soft. "There ain't nothing special about kindness." He revved once. A challenge, a curse behind a smile, a storm beginning. But Elsie simply said, "There is. That's why men like you fear it." His smirk broke, anger flashing like metal in moonlight, and then from far off, wind carried a sound, a growl, a rising thunder. Engines, many, not fast, purposeful. A rolling promise in the dark. The hostile bikers stiffened. Heads lifting. Tyler's breath caught. Elsie's heart knew before her ears did. They're coming. Thunder returns. First one headlight appeared. Then another. Then dozens, slicing through the night like burning constellations. No roar, no chaos. Discipline. Like wolves returning to claim what they guard, the hostile trio backed up, nerves cracking. "Hell's Angels," one muttered. They hadn't expected that loyalty to be real. From the front of the formation, a familiar figure rolled forward. Jax. No sunglasses this time. Eyes burning with purpose. Behind him, Saint. Behind him, Ghost, Bear, Torque, Diesel, Preacher, Bones. A wall of steel, leather and vow. Engines idled like church organs tuned to wrath. Jax looked at the intruders, like a man deciding graves. "You boys lost?" Silence. No bravado now. The hostile leader stammered. We were just..." Saint cut in, voice calm and terrifying. "You looking to start something where grace was given?" One of the intruders swallowed. "We didn't know." Jax leaned forward. "Now you do." Engines revved behind him. Synchronized, not noise, warning. The world paused. Then the lead rider nodded stiffly. Face pale. "We ain't touching that place again." They turned. They fled. Their engines squealed off into darkness like cowards fleeing a battlefield they never earned. Silence returned. Heavy, sacred. Jax rolled forward. "Killed the engine." He looked at Elsie. "No one touches you," he said softly. "Not on this earth while we breathe." Elsie's eyes softened. "I never doubted it." A rose garden witness. Tyler walked forward, awe in his breath. "You came back." Saint rumbled. "A promise isn't words." "A promise is returning." Jax nodded at Tyler. "Your old man would have stood here too." Tyler's voice shook. "Not fear, rising courage. I want to learn. To be like him. To ride right." Saint stepped closer, studying him. You will. In time. But first, you learn what Elsie already knows. And what's that? Tyler whispered. Saint touched a rose gently. Like it was a holy thing. That power isn't in steel or roads or fists. He looked at Elsie. Voice quiet thunder. It's in choosing kindness when the world expects cruelty. Elsie's eyes glimmered with quiet fire, and in standing for others when kindness is threatened, a hum of agreement rolled through the riders. Tonight, the roses heard vows older than law, older than road. Vows men carved into asphalt and bone. Oath under the porch light preacher, an old angel with scripture tattooed on knuckles, stepped forward. Not with violence, but reverence. He placed a candle on Elsie's porch rail. For safe nights, he murmured. Ghost planted a pocket knife, blade down in her soil. For protection, Bear left a worn leather riding glove on her steps. For strength, Jax took off his own patch pin, a small, wing-shaped metal badge, and set it beside the silver wing. Saint left earlier, for loyalty, he said. Elsie's throat tightened. Tyler wiped his eyes without shame. Saint looked at her garden one last time. This house, he said quietly, is sacred ground now. Departure, like prayer engines, rumbled again, deep and solemn, like a choir in steel. Jax turned. We'll ride close, always. Then they left, not roaring now, but gliding, like guardians in the night. One bike stayed 1 block away. Another parked 2 streets over, rotating, silent, watching, a quiet perimeter of Brotherhood. Elsie wasn't just protected, she was honored. Night's last whisper. Tyler stood beside Elsie, heart pounding like drums of destiny. Miss Elsie? He whispered. Yes, dear. Why'd they come back? Elsie looked at the candle, the knife, the wing, the glove, tokens of a loyalty earned, not bought. Because kindness, she said softly, is a seed that grows warriors. Tyler nodded. Tears sliding free. No shame tonight. Elsie squeezed his hand. Let's go inside. Tomorrow's a new day. As the porch light flickered warm against the dark, the wind carried distant engines again, not fading, not approaching, standing watch. If this gave you chills, like this story, share it, subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Prove your love.